What's up, man?
Hey Todd, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Fairly good. Um, yeah, let me just fix my camera here.
Yeah,
Not to be vain, but it's kind of chopping in my head. Uh,
no
I
problem.
guess it'll do. Anyway. Todd, what have you been up to? Thank you for coming to the show.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad. Thanks for taking me on.
Always.
So,
Any, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. For anyone thinking that my intro is a bit less dynamic than usual, is I'm messing with Instagram Live, which I'm not very used to, and Todd wanted to do it on Instagram. I was like, of course. You're the guest. And we might have other guests later on. We'll see. But yeah, we kind of decided on. I mean, first of all, what's up with you, Todd? What's new?
Um, Not much. I've been doing a lot of stuff on here, obviously, but yeah, just doing work and then doing stuff here. That's kind of. I live a quiet life, so you know, not much action in my life. I just live here with my wife in Oklahoma. I had a lot of action, when I was younger. Going around the world and stuff. So yeah, so it's easy to live the quiet life now. It's better. It's good for the
So
kids.
yeah, so Todd Atkins show. Todd has a lot of guests. Old school MMA fans will love this show if they don't already know it, because he has like so many people from Pride, early UFC. You're a friend of Chris Lieben, and you have him on the show sometimes, I believe, at least once. I don't know if, but
I
yeah. So
trained
for
with.
anyone, yeah, yeah, yes, you did. When I say friends, you actually trained with him,
Hmm.
which I'm sure there's a lot of stories you can't even tell, but that must be pretty interesting.
Uh, I think he puts out most of his stuff. Like he had a book, I think. So I think he's put everything out there that he could have about that kind of any kind of wild stories. But me, I mean, when I trained with him, I just trained with him at TJ Thompson's gym, so I wasn't running around with him or anything. I mean, he had people he hung out with, but I did watch a fight. I think George St. Pierre. I'm trying to remember who it was that he fought. We watched that one at a local bar somewhere. I remember, but yeah, I mostly just trained with him at TJ's gym.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess we should get into it because or should we, do you know, wait, there's something we decided we would talk about on the show, but do you think we should wait, because someone might come later on, so I don't know if you want to wait a little bit to see if the person comes. How do you want to do this? Yeah?
No, it's totally up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't matter to me.
Okay. We can wait
Mhm.
a little bit, I guess, because just to be upfront, we'll be talking about what happened with Cain Velasquez. But there's someone that Todd invited who might be able to come, who might, I don't want to mention the name if we're not sure that person's coming, but they might have some interesting points of view and experience to bring to the conversation that maybe hasn't been heard. I mean, we don't know everything that's been said around, but
Mhm.
certainly we would be really interested to have him on. So maybe we'll wait a little bit. If first comes to shove, Don and I can discuss it, and then if the person comes back, we'll get back to their point of view. But certainly, yeah. Anyway,
I'm
enough teasing
sending.
of something that's in the air. But
Yeah, I sent him the live, so
yeah,
we'll see if he
okay,
checks it out.
yeah. So did you watch? In the meantime, did you watch UFC 272?
Uh, I watched some of it. I saw the results and everything, and yeah, I watched some stuff of it here and there. Yeah.
I
What
saw
do you
it,
think
but
of it?
oh my God, you know what happened to me, Todd? I'm getting old. I'm a dad now, and so I can't recover the sleep I used to, And what happened? I went to see the Batman in the movie theaters, and when I came back, I watched UFC 272 when I came back, and I was kind of sleep watching it. I was. staying seated in front of my laptop, but I was kind of like, so I kind of, it's kind of a hazy. I feel like I
Mhm.
almost, there's moments that stand out, like when Masvidal almost knocked out Covington, and just, I think what happened, people say he didn't pull the trigger, but, and again, I was so tired, I might get it wrong. And even if I wasn't tired, I might get it wrong. But I think what happened is Masvidal was just generally exhausted, where he could, it's easy to say pull the trigger, but I think a fighter, and you have more actual hard fighting experience than me when it comes to sparring and all that, I'm sure. So you can let me know. But I think sometimes there's a decision to be made: is do I pull the trigger and give it everything, and if it doesn't work, then I'm really done, or do I keep going at a steady pace and preserve that energy in case I couldn't put him out? And I think that was the moment for Masvidal to put everything, because to me, the way I saw it is, if he didn't, like, that was the moment, and if it didn't work, nothing was going to work anyway. So you might as well just, but that's easy for me to say sitting in front of my laptop. In the moment, it's a whole different story. Also, for us, we kind of see it in terms of like, oh, win or lose. But of course, if you are drained of all your energy, that's a beating coming your way, which is a whole other decision to make. Um, but I think that was the one moment that Masvidal could have finished it. But I'm gonna be honest, he did better than I thought he would against Kobe.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's kind of hard when you have a guy who's predominantly a striker. He's facing a guy he knows is going to take him down. That's why you can't pull the triggers effectively. They're hesitant. You know,
Yeah.
got a guy who can put you down if you get a little too aggressive. So it's hard for. That's why I always feel like guys like Masvidal or other strikers, when they're fighting someone like that, when they're fighting someone like Makachev, Khabib, Colby, any of these guys that are wrestling heavy, you really don't have much of a chance to win the fight.
Yeah.
You have small little windows, where you're on your feet, beginning of the round, maybe in
The
some sprint.
rules the rules try to make it so the rules of MMA are artificially, how can I put this? Already grappling is really 95% of the time king,
Mm-hmm.
but the rules are made to artificially inflate the chances of striking. And this is something a lot of modern fans may not realize, that a lot of strikers get to win fights when they do because of the rule set. It was structured on purpose for that, to make it more exciting to the casual viewer. Although, by the way, when I meant pull the trigger, I was specifically referring when Kobe Covington was actually shaken by strikes. Like, he was kind of like almost out, and he survived. That was the moment when I thought like, oh, that was his chance. But that's the whole thing. Like, the round resets on your feet, and there's conversations that you could do away with rounds, or you could, although rounds are exciting for people, they add to the conversation. Or you could start a round in the same place that you left it. If you're on top of someone, kind of like in jiu-jitsu tournaments, where they if the ref checks something, they put you back where you were. Like, um, they even do it in combat jiu-jitsu, where you know that the guy's got rain strikes on you, and you still have to go back under. So, but I guess it's less exciting as a sport if they do that, and it kind of depends what the priority is. Is this the sport, or is it the original intention of showing everyone how badass grappling is? But I agree with you. I think the one exception is Adesanya.
Uh, Maybe. I mean, Adesanya fought Yoel Romero, but Yoel wasn't really in wrestling. He wasn't, not every decorated wrestler is a guy who can get on top in mixed martial arts. And Chael Sonnen talked about this in an old interview, a real old interview, not on his channel or anything, but there people think if a guy's a great wrestler, it means he can get on top in mixed martial arts, but it's not necessarily true. Some guys who win wrestling matches without it getting a takedown. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And Romero was more known as a guy who could dominate matches on the ground, not necessarily a guy who was great at takedowns per se. It's not
Mhm.
that he was bad at them or anything, but and then in MMA he really didn't get on top much. He was chose to strike more. His brother was a boxer.
Yeah.
His brother Johan. So Adesanya's fought one. Well, I would say uh, the guy he just fought. He's a pretty good wrestler, and he got on top of him some. Bobby
Mm,
Knuckles. But you know, when you have a good wrestler, someone like could be Makachev, some of these other guys. Hamza.
Usman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're not on their level, your chance of winning the fight is about this much, and that has always been true from the beginning of the sport
Mm,
to now.
yeah.
If you can't wrestle at that level and you're fighting someone who can, their chance of winning is this, and your chance is this. You know?
Yeah, and we're not saying anything new, of course, but I mean, maybe for people watching my show, it's new. But I think there's also the rule set favors explosive grappling. So I would say that now I'm gonna generalize a lot. This is a huge generalization, so don't be offended. Don't come at me like, hey, you know what? I do no-gi BJJ and we're super explosive. Okay, I understand you, but also I think BJJ has been really influenced these past few years by MMA. But if I go with the classic versions, and I generalize a lot, I think rule sets that don't take their time are like more efficient for MMA for obvious reasons, shorter rounds and all that. So wrestling, sambo, and like just even judo actually in some ways back in the early days, and then as the no-gi game evolved and judo wasn't really interested in the no-gi so much, that's where sambo kind of steps in, I guess. Even though sambo's with a jacket, they tend to adapt very well because of the wrestling in there. They tend to adapt very well to not having a jacket. And I think it's just like whatever grappling is very explosive will favor current MMA rules, whereas BJJ, um, I think it would be redeemed in a different rule set with less time, with time limits that are ridiculous or no time limits. I think that's where BJJ would be somewhat redeemed. I mean, don't get me wrong, BJJ is still like an integral key of MMA. But what I mean is like when you see the people on top, um, the classic idea was that the BJJ guys are really good on the ground, but they're not the best at taking someone down. But over a very, very long fight, everyone becomes easy to take down at some point, uh, which is, anyway. But yeah, so wrestlers, sambo players, they're, yeah, I think, was it you? I think you made a post on Instagram that was really, it left me thinking how people have this perception that the game has changed a lot, whereas maybe it's more the rule sets have changed, and for sure fighters can do more, but like they're more hybrid than it used to be. But beyond that, it's I think when it comes to the grapplers, the ones that were champions back then, I think could still have the potential to be these days, even with their old styles. People might not want to believe it, but I think you mentioned there was something about matchmaking and the rule set.
Yeah. So if I signed certain guys, Conor McGregor, Israel Adesanya, all these kind of guys, and I matched them against people that were favorable for them, and then I tell everyone they're the best fighters in the world. Has the sport evolved? No, I made it look that way.
Mhm.
But if I bring in a bunch of guys that can take anybody to the floor,
Yeah,
those guys like Adesanya and McGregor and those, they wouldn't survive in my promotion. If you
but
look at
Adesanya,
you
didn't he
some,
face Brunson?
huh?
He faced
Right, but
Brunson though.
yeah, but Brunson's not. I'm talking about elite guys.
Okay,
These guys from Dagestan and
yeah,
Kazakhstan, Georgia, Chechnya, these guys are the best wrestlers in the world. They're the ones that dominate the Olympics.
yeah,
So if I have a roster full of these guys, which UFC could if they wanted to, they're in other promotions. They could sign these guys. The reason they don't sign them is because they'd kill everybody. And then they'd have a whole
mm,
promotion full of these guys and that no one could
yeah,
beat other than each other. The other guys wouldn't last long at all. So
yeah,
a lot of it has to do with matchmaking, how many guys you're signing, like what do you call it? Like a multi uh, faceted promotion where I'm signing X amount of these guys, this style, da 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 da, and then I'm going to match make it to where there's more representation. so
Yeah.
people can get a little bit of flavors, like
Hmm.
different flavors ice cream. Over here, you got your striking. Over here, and they're all doing well, or they all have a chance to thrive. As to where, if McGregor was fighting an M1 or one gorilla fighting, or one of these, he wouldn't have rose to the top. He would have got destroyed quickly because he'd fight
Yeah.
somebody. You look at the guy who lost the only guy. There's a guy Hamza beat in Brave. I think the guy right now is probably like 17 or 18-1. He's from that area as well. I don't.
Yeah.
I think he's from Dagestan. Yeah, and while the fight, Hamzat knocked him out with an uppercut. Kind of a long uppercut. But they wrestled, exchanged for probably the first 3 or 4 minutes hard.
That's
Hamzat couldn't get him
yeah.
down. And that guy, nobody else is giving him a fight. He's whipping everybody else he fights. So I'm saying they got guys like that all over the place.
They do.
If they
Yeah.
brought him over to the UFC, they'd be wiping out everybody uh, like locusts, eating up
Yeah.
the
In one
trees.
championship, they're starting to have a few. They used to favor strikers in one for MMA, which is also why Ben Askren was so dominant there. I mean, Ben Askren is a legit badass. I don't mean to imply otherwise, but I mean, he had an easy time in one, I think, because there weren't that many wrestlers. Which brings me back, man. If Masvidal had not landed that knee, that one knee, if that hadn't landed, I really believe in people like, you know, I really think that Masvidal would not have won. I think he would have been in trouble for that fight, even with
Yeah.
a diminished Askren. Like I really, and that's the thing that it's kind of funny how casuals think Askren is a joke, and
Mm-hmm.
then people who know modern MMA but maybe listen a bit too much to the promotion think Askren is a joke, and then there's people like me who are like, you know what, that knee was a chance in a million. I mean, it was effectively executed. I'm not saying it didn't come without planning. We saw that he had planned it, but Askren has gone through a lot of stuff without ever getting knocked out, and who knows if the Robbie Lawler fight didn't somewhat affect his chin as well before that, or maybe just the years of it, or maybe it was just a perfect knee in that moment. But there's that. I don't think if there had been a rematch, I don't think Masvidal would have won the rematch. Once he used that one knee, I don't think he wins any rematch against a wrestler like Askren, even in the state he was in. Which, and people were laughing at the striking against Damian Maia, but like, how can you sleep on the amazing grappling we saw? And then they're mocking, oh, he got choked. And I'm like, yeah, but because Askren took chances. Like, the thing is that he was giving Maia his back on purpose. He was doing something, it just didn't work. But the fact that he even managed to give his back a few times, at least once, like he did this thing where he used his arm to then like carry Maya. Just the fact that he did that, like it's against Maya. You don't give your back to Maya, and he paid the price for it. Don't get me wrong, but I mean the fact that before that there's a moment where I think he just shouldn't have tried to pull it twice. Because once you did it to Maya one time, like he's gonna like you don't give him your back twice. But yeah, it's just crazy to think people just don't understand. They like you say, they think. Like, I mean, striking is essential, of course, and when you have two people whose grappling is kind of canceled between each other, the striking comes in. Good striking can deter some wrestling, as like as we see happen all the time to Blades, Curtis Blades. There's cases where the striking can, if you don't know how to apply the grappling in MMA, you can definitely get knocked out. Not saying Curtis Blades can't, but he's gone against people who knew when to time it and struck hard enough in Ngannou and Lewis. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how the world sees Askren now, and it's like they don't really understand that this guy, like even in his diminished state, could have normally wiped the floor with Masvidal. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Masvidal saw that he would have small windows to win, and he took chances to do that. And you know, he didn't do that against Covington as far as being taking that kind of a big risk, but I think he felt like he had to do that because if he didn't, he was going to be on the floor and he wouldn't be able to get up.
Yeah.
And Askren is a little bit better at advancing positions against guys that aren't on his level. He did that a lot in Bellator,
Yeah.
and probably would have done that to Masvidal.
Well, I think so. I really think so because Askren has a good chin. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like he was knocked out when we saw him get knocked. Like like Lawler didn't knock him out. We saw him get knocked out by Masvidal's crazy flying knee. Which congrats for that one. Don't get me wrong. And then against Jake Paul in a sport that wasn't his, with rules very different than the ones he was familiar with, against a man who was grossly oversized, and then he was truly out of his prime and out of shape, out of fighting shape at least. And also, he explained even himself that he had this tendency in MMA to leave his side exposed, to have people try to attack him, and then he would tackle them. And that for boxing was just a bad combination. He actually said in an interview. So, again, like people, it's true. A lot of people don't understand what's really going on, the matchmaking, the choices, and even stuff like Tony Ferguson. Like, I'm not gonna say that the guy's in his prime anymore, but like even people are really selective in how they choose to do certain things because when you look at Ferguson, who did he lose against? Gaethje, Oliveira, and Dariush. So now, at this point, I don't think Ferguson ever gets to a belt at this point in his life.
Mm-hmm.
But you're getting these dialogues like, oh, like he's washed up and that's it. And but I'm like, yeah, but look at what Oliveira did to people that others can like. Look at what he did to Poirier. And if anything, Ferguson actually survived the grappling a lot better than Poirier did. So
Mm-hmm.
I I wonder what Ferguson versus Poirier would look like because everyone's like, oh, Poirier is the best guy, but yeah, because he's a really good boxer in MMA. But then every time you put him against like Javier or Oliveira, like gets choked from the back, and as 99.9% of the planet would. Uh, but again, it's very interesting how the perception, because of the matchmaking, the perception goes. And um, I would really like. I don't think like Ferguson versus Poirier. If you were to ask people, everyone, Poirier for sure, but I'm not so sure. I don't know what you think, but it's these matchmakings and these fight results have people like come to conclusions that are not really, they're formed on statistics and not on looking at the fight game.
Yeah, I think fans that they call them like casual fans, right? They like I was talking about before, they think that there's they don't they think, oh, this guy can beat this guy, da 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 da. When the truth is, like imagine if Poirier had to fight 20 guys with the skill of Khabib in a row, he
Yeah,
probably would not have been a star of any sort.
yeah.
It's about who they match him against. That's what they do with McGregor. Except for he had to fight Khabib at some point. He didn't have a choice, you know, and that was that, And even after that, when he fought Poirier's they felt that was a good matchup for him because Poirier is a stand-up fighter, so he at least has a chance to win. They never put him in again with another guy with the level of Khabib's skills, as far as wrestling goes. They're not going to put him in with Makachev. They know what Makachev would do to him. Why would they? If he comes back, they'll probably put him in against Masvidal, someone like that. If he fights at
Uh,
once,
McGregor, you
yeah,
mean? Yeah, they should do that. They, they
yeah,
they should open up the fun fights like Diaz. Like like they should just give Diaz to Diaz and Poirier. Like I don't know what it is about them just refusing to make fun fights for fighters who are not within reach of the belt anymore. Like Anderson Silva. Like they don't they really want to feed them to the young, but it's not fun to watch. You know, it's not.
Has one fight left on his deal, so they don't want to give him something good
No,
because
I understand. Yeah.
if he leaves, he's going to go out on a high, and he's going to use that to go into boxing, which is what he wants to do, from what I'm hearing, and they would rather him not, you know, leave on a high note. Especially, they probably don't want him to leave at all, but they don't want to risk that. They just had that with Ngannou, you know. Ngannou just had his last fight.
Yeah.
It's not likely he's going to be signed with the UFC probably,
Yeah.
and
Do you think he's gonna wait a whole year and just?
yeah,
Yeah,
I,
me too. He should. Yeah,
mhm.
he should definitely do that.
So they don't want to let Diaz kind of promote himself on the way out the door, you know, when he's trying to maybe have a couple boxing matches and then ride off into the sunset, you know. As to where I think it'd be better for them to say, you know, you've given us a lot of time, but you know, they're promoters. They don't want to help gas up another promotion, you know, like Jake
Yeah.
Paul or whatever it might be. So I don't know. I think I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I'm not in a position where I'm having to put my promotion at risk or my business at risk. But I think UFC's big enough now that they could withstand Nate Diaz going off and fighting Jake Paul or whoever. You know, it wouldn't kill their business. So I
No,
think, you
especially
know
if it's
what?
boxing, it's not even the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say you gave us a lot of good years. Go ahead and go do this fight. It's no problem. You know.
That's how I felt about Anderson Silva. Like I just felt like of all people, they should have given him a fun fight out. Like, I mean, I think there's so many of us, and it's kind of like the guy wasn't done, and then he got to have a win in boxing. But I think a lot of us, like story-wise, which life isn't a story, but you know what I mean, we kind of wanted him to leave after the Adesanya fight. I don't know about you, but like that would have been the because he didn't win, but he looked good, and you know, there's a combination of many things of stylistic matchup and also, I think Adesanya had like a lot of fighters, a lot of admiration and respect. Was it Hall who last defeated Silva in the cage and started crying because he had to defeat his idol? I don't know. It's just I understand the business side, but I can't. I think there should be this old school mentality as well, where if someone did so much for your company, you kind of do something for them, right? Um, And I think they're thinking at this point very short term. I understand how they got the monopsony of the market through these behaviors, but where we are now, especially with the internet and all that, it's only a matter of time before competition starts showing up. And then I think long term, fighters will start wanting to go elsewhere as a default. Like not
Mm-hmm.
because we're still at the point where like fighters still want to go to UFC because it's a big name and all that, but I don't know. Like I think with social media presence and fighters being able to market themselves independent of what company they're with, if they do some interviews, if they do some fun stuff, if they make a bit of controversy, you know, like I think UFC's behavior at this point has become, even though that's what got them there, now has become a short-term sight. Um, because if fighters can only think of leaving as soon as they made it, for now it might not hurt their business, but long term it will. Like
Yeah,
they're
I
gonna,
mean,
yeah,
you know, they're on ESPN too. So also, so you got to think about ESPN has some say so in what's going on, and they both probably have their own, you know, bean counters, so to speak, or statisticians that are saying, look, if we let this guy go, he's going to do this many buys. You know, they've calculated it out already, and it may be that they feel it's too much of a risk. You know, they're weighing the risk reward of doing that, and they feel like it's too much risk. So
I suppose.
you have other people. Scott Coker probably would do the opposite. He would probably be like, you know what, I'll let this guy go do something. He's
Oh
not going
yeah,
to my
yeah.
promotion, so I'll let him go do this. But it's just a different, like I was saying before, different flavors. You got one flavor that doesn't want to let anybody do anything, and you have another one that's a little bit more
I like
relaxed, so to speak.
Coker. Yeah, I like Coker. How he does things.
Yeah, but he
Um,
hasn't been as effective as the UFC either. So, you know.
okay, fair enough.
I
Yeah.
liked Bellator more before Scott Coker got there.
Oh
You know, when they
really?
Yeah, when they had Beyond Revenue, it was on the same night of the week, every week, Friday nights. I think it was Friday or Thursday. They had a tournament format, so it was very different than the UFC. They had a season format. So one fight led to the other. You know, it was a bracket. You knew
Hmm.
this fight, whoever wins fights this,
In,
the winner of the fight. It
Invicta,
did
yeah,
match. It was already done.
yeah, Invicta did that 2 years ago. Is it around the beginning of the pandemic? Yeah, they did a tournament format, and the way they made it was like the fights were 2 rounds, and they made it so at the end of the night, a single fighter didn't have to fight much more than a 5 round fight would have been. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember exactly how they did, if there was a tie or something, but maybe they did an extra round, but it was like very short rounds, and so they kind of, because with modern MMA, like people kind of want to see the fighters, if possible, at their prime, even though they always carry injuries. But that's a perception, at least. And Invicta had found a way to do that, and they also tried the open scorecards. I'm a bit sour because the I forgot her name, but the CEO of Invicta had well, I shouldn't even have said that, but never mind. That's not something I should be talking about. Uh, See, I get talking to you. I'm like talking with a buddy, and I'm not like I forgot for a moment we're recording live. Um, yeah, doesn't matter. So yeah, never talk about what could have happened or not behind the scenes of a show. So yeah, but that was interesting. I was like, oh, right, the tournament format. That's kind of cool. That's very old school. They tried it, so kudos to Invicta for bringing it back um, a while
I
back. I don't know
thought
if they continue doing it.
it pretty well. If you were online at that time, there were a lot of people that I think the UFC had maybe employed to come online on these forums and pick apart their ratings, the Bellator ratings,
Mm,
on aliases. Oh, Bellator's not doing good. They only had this many buys, but Bellator was on the up, in my opinion. I think that Viacom, who was behind them, and this happens a lot, when you sell a business or you let someone in to give you more financing. Now they want to meddle with what's working. And they did that. They got rid of Beyond Revenue. They got rid of the format. They bring in Scott Coker. And where's Bellator now? I mean, he
mm,
hasn't, in terms of the stars that are in Bellator, who are they? Those guys were, most of them were guys that were stars in Bjorn Rebney's organization. Pitbull, you know, Michael Chandler before he left. Um, Venom Page was a guy that Bjorn Rebney signed. Um, so yeah, a lot of the people that were stars in Bellator at that time are the stars of Bellator now. Now they did find Antonio McKee, who I think is, he could be one of the best fighters in the world, arguably at his weight, um, for sure. And Coker's the guy who brought him in, so he did a good job with that one for sure. But Bjorn Rebney was doing a lot of cool stuff back then. I don't know how much you watched his organization, but he was already bringing guys in
yeah,
like the C is doing. He already had guys from like Dagestan. He had Hasbulayev. He had Shamalat. He had Storm Shlemenko, who was a champion in Bellator. He had Alexander Volkov, who's in the UFC now. He had a lot.
yeah.
He had uh, his heavyweight champion. Man, I forgot his name, but he was a
The
really
current
good.
one?
No, Bellator's heavyweight champion under Bjorn Rebney.
Oh,
He
okay.
had a lot of Russian fighters he was already working with from M1. So he was already doing a lot of that stuff before other people were really focusing on it. He was bringing in a lot of talented guys. So they were going out. He had his matchmaker. They were going out and finding guys that were not in the UFC
Hmm.
and bringing them in. The Pitbull brothers, Michael Chandler, Ben Askren, on and on. They had a lot of really good fighters in Bellator that had never fought in the UFC. So it wasn't like they were taking guys from the UFC. They were taking guys that never fought in the UFC. They were finding people who had potential.
Yeah.
and that was interesting to me. They didn't need to get people from the UFC. They didn't even try, until much later when Viacom started meddling with things, and that's when they got Rampage Jackson and Tito. But that was
Exactly.
not what Bellator built itself on at all, you know, at all.
Yeah, I actually started MMA late. Just full transparency. The first time I actually watched a UFC pay-per-view, well, no, actually I started early, very early in a way, because when I was a teenager, I watched the early UFC videotapes at the video store rental. So UFC one, two, I saw like the first three or four on VHS, and then I spent most of my adult life like just being aware of it, like and then the first pay-per-view I really watched was Stipe versus Cormier one, because by then I had started training, and so I kind of started like watching it late. I started training late. It was kind of funny because for me it was just this thing where I would often end up stepping in to help someone, and I thought, well, maybe I should learn how to how to do this right, and um, and I kind of got into it. It's kind of funny. I was always like this geek guy, and through starting to do, I was never interested in sports, but then started to do like martial arts and the combat sports, not just martial arts. I'm gonna do this in the air and tell people I do martial arts, but like actual sparring, actual rolling, stuff like that. It kind of awakened my inner sports fan, I guess, my inner whatever you want to call it, and that's kind of how it happened. And I really regret I didn't start when I was younger. I really, really, really regret I didn't start when I was younger because um, it's just so much fun. It's so much fun, and even my geek side is satisfied by this because there's so much information to nitpick and to analyze and to look at, and then like finding your own way of expressing it is very artistic, it's very creative. Just to give an example, this is gonna sound like super, super stupid and silly, but um, the other day I was kind of watching, I don't know, just for fun, I was watching people use like those winch and dummies, the wooden dummy. And I was like, okay, and I'm watching this for fun. I'm thinking like, okay, there's going to be this practical application to this. And then I saw the Icy Mike in the video from Heart to Heart. He's like actually talking to a Jeet Kune Do guy, and they're talking about how does this apply to actual sparring. And it's like, okay, that actually makes sense. And I saw something like you can use kind of the Philly shell, and then you can sweep with the arm like this, and then you punch, and it doesn't look very Wing Chun-y, but that's that principle, like okay, so that's interesting. So you kind of can go into these deep dives, and even last time when I spoke, I think I mentioned this that I was more comfortable for some reason doing some stuff in striking when I was wearing like MMA sparring gloves rather than big boxing or Muay Thai gloves. I think I had discussed it because we were talking about a bare knuckle, and I was like, you know what, I do some I'm more comfortable doing weird stuff with those gloves. Like I do this thing where sometimes I will do like this sideways hammer fist. So a person thinks I'm jabbing, and it's not gonna knock anyone out, but they kind of like slip it. But then I kind of go like this back, and
Mm-hmm.
well, if you catch someone in the other temple, who knows? Sometimes it's a shot you didn't see coming. It doesn't need to be really. But my point is, I'm not thinking like, oh, this is the hardest set ever. But it's just like a little something, and I was like, huh, and just thought I had come up with this shit. And I never feel comfortable with the gloves for some reason. I always do it just with MMA gloves. But then I realized the other day I was watching those like Wing Chun dummy stuff, and I remember like a long, long time ago I had tried like some kung fu style for one or two classes, and it wasn't for me because they were doing stuff like when you kick, you cross the legs, the knees, you cross the knees like this. And even then, I was thinking, well, what if someone pushes you, your legs are crossed? That makes no sense. So I kind of didn't go back to it. But they showed this thing, okay? It's this animal style. So it goes like this. You block like this. It's a bird. So this is like the bird's beak, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you block like this. And one thing I didn't like as well is you didn't block with your bone. You blocked with the muscle, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I know it can happen in a fight, but you don't try to do that. I don't think because then I don't know if you can even close your fist if you get hurt. So you block like this, and then you when you block the punch, you go like this to a person's temple, like a beak, a bird's beak. So tuck
Hmm.
tuck. And I always thought, oh, that's silly. Like you can't. How are you gonna in the middle of a fight? Even then, again, like how are you gonna catch someone's like temple like this with the tips of your fingers? And anyway,
Hmm.
chances of that working. But then what can happen is just it's kind of funny how it still stuck with me. Where sometimes I would be like alone, I would just do it for fun. Like just it was a fun thing. Like okay, it's a fun, cool move. Or I would tell people, ha ha ha, look at this silly stuff. And the other day, I don't know if it unlocked something in my mind because I was watching those like Wunsch and Demi things. I kind of realized, oh shit, it's actually something I do in sparring. I just instead of doing this, I go with a hammer fist. But it's the move that I was mocking this whole time, but just a slight change.
Hmm.
And I was
What,
like, and I do it all
what,
the time.
yeah. What works is only limited by what people are willing to try, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of like I spent so many years talking trash about it, and I mean I still wouldn't do it like this. Don't get me wrong, there was a principle there that just out of being so weird that no one knew it, at least where I trained. I mean, it's not like a hammer fist is this mysterious thing, but like people think, oh, he's gonna throw a straight or a jab, and then suddenly it's like pop. Like it's just and it, just the distraction of it can lead to a kick next or something. Like because now the person kind of went like this, and now's the time to go for the body with a kick or something. Um, because now they were slipping, they get hit, and they lean a bit more, and you know, um, yes, I don't know. So my geeky side is also very satisfied by martial arts because you get to really dive deep and find silly shit all the time. And is this gonna work? Is this not gonna work? Or is this not
Yeah.
working at first? And then just
For example, to go back to the wrestling, a lot of people say that the low ankle pick doesn't work in MMA, right? But there's a fighter in the UFC, Mateos Gamrot. That's his go-to takedown, and he makes it work against almost everybody he fights.
so
So
that's the one where is it the one where you cannot go completely on the floor and pick the ankle, or is it one where you cannot go down and come back up right away? Is it because
yeah.
is it the one where you're on the floor and you push with your shoulder?
Well, there's different ways you can finish it, but there's a number of ways you can finish it. It's the ankle pick is kind of like you have the entry to the ankle, and then you have finishes. For example, a guy who's from my area, John Smith. John Smith is probably the guy who's most well known in the history of at least American wrestling, and Cael Sanderson. They were both known for the ankle pick. He had several ways he could get into it, and he had a ton of ways he could finish it. So it's not really one finish, it's more the entry, getting to the ankle and not having it slip out in MMA, which is what most people say would happen. But Gamrot is able to make that technique work over and over and over again. So, like I said, it's only limited by what you're willing to try. Same with Anderson Silva. He made a lot of techniques work in his fights that people probably thought were silly, but he made them work,
Yeah,
when he's doing all this kind of stuff.
but sometimes he would do it for like I think with Silva is
So,
it's kind of fun. I mean, I realized that man could kill me in so many ways in his sleep, but Silva also sometimes believed in some stuff that was kind of like, well, that I know you're one of the goats, but that still doesn't. Like sometimes he would do this, but there is no purpose to it.
that's what
Um,
martial artists do. They're creative thinkers, and
that's true. That's true.
they,
If it gets him in his zone,
yeah, they
um,
understand.
because I saw him do this knife defense that was really horrible. Then again, he was trying something in. Maybe he was just trying it out in a school. Doesn't mean he believed in it, but like, he had like at some point I saw him try this knife defense that was kind of like the knife goes like along the throat or something. You kind of roll around. I don't remember what it was, but then again, it's completely out of context, so who knows? Like. Um, but yeah, I just remember sometimes he would do this and then get punched. That happened around the end, at least. Um, but he certainly brought back some kicks that were kind of disrespected in MMA. That's for sure.
Yeah, and in order to be that creative, you have to learn a lot of different stuff. and then be willing to try and do it,
Yeah.
which he was. He was willing to try those things, but first you had to go and learn them. So he tried all these different arts. He was willing to try them, and then try to go in and see if he could do something in the cage with it. You have to be creative and willing to perform. Most guys want to win. Performing is not that important to them. Winning is the most important thing. But Silva, which it could be to his detriment at times, he
Yeah.
wanted to perform, and sometimes he paid for that. But most of the
Yeah.
time, he won.
That's true. That's true. And you could argue maybe the playfulness is what allowed him to become such a winner. So, it all goes together in the end,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Yeah, that crossover with Steven Seagal was maybe the weirdest era of the Silva, I mean, the weirdest event of the Silva era, I think. When Seagal
Yeah.
was there with him, that was something. Um, there was a time when we thought, like, I mean, me as a kid at least, there was a time when I thought that Steven Seagal was a legit badass.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, that there's a transition that happened over time. And, like, sometimes now that I'm really into MMA, I can't understand people. Sometimes their perception of fighting or martial arts or whatever. But then I have to remember, even as well. Okay, now it's like more than 15 years ago. What 2005? I was a young man in my 20s. I didn't watch MMA regularly back then. I still thought if someone asked me, "Does Aikido work?" I would be like, "Oh yeah, for sure." I thought it worked. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
practice it, but I mean, I saw some videos and I didn't know what I was looking at. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, they're flipping the guys around. That works." You know? Um, Yeah, but it's kind of crazy how martial arts like has there's so much information, but a lot of people just don't want to get rid of the mystique of it, right? They just don't want to accept it that it's a bit more down to earth. But at the same time, what's funny is those same people who see MMA as this trashy thing, oh, it's just people shouting at each other and all that. And I'm thinking, well, what do you think those like legends of martial arts duels were, where they fought for honor and they didn't like each other. They had, oh, you insulted me, we're gonna fight. It's the same thing. It's just like one is the kind of polished and far away in the past where you can imagine it in a very romantic way, and the other one's in your face with cameras. Do you think like two old karate masters in old Japan who didn't like each other? Did you think that it was like, well, okay, maybe they were like very stoic and all that, but I'm sure you can take a lot of examples where um, you actually see modern masters of their craft fighting for honor or money, which maybe some people don't like, but whatever. And it's just interesting how you can. There's people I think who are kind of reluctant to accept MMA and who are even like kind of butthurt that all those romantic notions of martial arts were redefined. I wouldn't say stripped away, but they were certainly redefined. But I think they're still there. Like when we see someone do something in the cage that is amazing, it is amazing. It is beautiful. It is, incredible. Or you have these amazing moments of humanity, like when Khabib was fighting Gaethje and decided to not do an armbar and do a triangle instead in the middle of a championship fight.
Mm-hmm.
He just chose to not hurt his opponent, and then he talked about his parents, and I'm thinking, well, that is definitely martial arts. I understand that there's a lot of stuff that goes into the reality of filming people under pressure and stress, and they fight for money, they want to make a show, but it's like the romanticism isn't gone. It's just you see every other aspect as well. But some people just want to cling to the old ideas that I don't know, you can do this and the guy's gonna flip.
Um, I grew up watching, like the Hong Kong movies, the Shaw Brothers movies, which were done like I think in the 70s and the 80s
Yeah,
as a young kid, and those had a lot of those values. But watching mixed martial arts, it didn't bother me that some of those didn't have them. It
yeah,
just it's just a different element. But I always, I remember when I first watched, I think it was UFC 2 of my father. because he watched some of those kung fu movies with me too, ninja movies and stuff. We loved it. We thought it was amazing what we were watching. You know, that it even was allowed to exist. It's amazing.
It is
Thoroughly perceived.
really crazy.
And we thought it was kind of kind of like a showcase of these things we had watched. Just different combinations. But I still go back and watch some of these kung fu movies today. They're
Oh
still
yeah,
great today.
yeah, I love
And
Jackie Chan. Yeah.
no, not Jackie Chan. I'm talking about guys that you don't. Nobody knows their name.
Well, you're thinking the 36 Chambers of Shaolin?
Yeah,
Is that
Gordon
okay?
Liu and yeah. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there's
But Jackie Chan
these
did some
guys.
stuff with the Shaw Brothers early on. Plan A, was it a? Wasn't that
He
a Shaw
did.
movie?
If you have Netflix, they actually have a kung fu documentary about the Shaw brothers and
Yeah, I
some
watched it
films
a
there.
long
Yeah,
time, two
and I
years
thought it
ago
was,
or something.
yeah, I thought it was pretty good. And
Yeah.
they were kind of going through a history of some of the movies they were making in Hong Kong. And yeah, I thought those movies were amazing, and it doesn't bother me that how mixed martial arts is. I don't care really. I mean, I I don't know if they feel like they have to act a certain way. You can tell it's kind of forced, which is kind of lame a little bit. When you can tell it's forced. But other than that, it's not really big for me. All I care about is watching the fight and seeing who can make who can
Yeah.
be effective. To me, that's all that
But it
really.
is
I
satisfying.
don't cheer for certain fighters
Yeah.
or anything like that. I just watch. To me, it's just watching the exchange of technique and who can execute. That's it for
I
me.
mean, I,
That's it.
I was happy when Ngannou won. I was happy because of what it meant to the UFC's control. What
Yeah,
how it challenged things. It was exciting. It was way more exciting than if Gunn had won, in my opinion. And no disrespect to the man who lost, but it's just the UFC has everything under control so often. It's kind of exciting to see them not be under control for once. And Ngannou should be a massive star. They messed him up so much. They messed up so much the opportunities they had with Ngannou that it was just really satisfying to see him win. And I hope he just sits a year out and just relaxes until the contract is over. And just to watch whatever UFC will do. Will they wait? And they lost. Do they strip him? And they lost. Like there's no way they can look good, and I love that because it's too much power like in one place. And the way they treat the fighters, I don't like it. I don't care how much business sense it makes. I don't like it. But to go back to the entertainment, it's still satisfying though when we see stuff like the John Wick movies where you're starting to see like they're grappling, they're using the jacket that's like judo and jujitsu and sambo. They do stuff that kind of, I mean, it's still cinematic and all that, but it still makes more sense. Even movies that are more like, for example, the have you seen The Night Belongs to Us?
you know,
Okay, it's an Indonesian action movie, and like now they made him like so violent. It's like modern and violent, and they're still focusing on the striking, but it's kind of like they modernized it. Like they kind of go, okay, no one wants to see someone do an animal move. Let's make it look more modern. But they're still doing the same stunts, and it's kind of the same kind of choreography, but it's super violent. The night comes from it's on Netflix. The night belongs to us, or the night comes for us. One of those
I
two.
John Wick. They just to me, it's just kind of a rip off. Did you ever see Chow Yun Fat's movies out of Hong Kong?
Play on Fat? Oh yeah, of course. The whoa, wait. I was gonna troll you. Of course, the Replacement Killers with Mira Sorvino. No, I can't. That was a Hollywood movie.
That was one of them.
Yeah, but
But
yeah.
that was
But
the
I'm
best one.
joking. That
Yeah.
was not the. What's the one where there's wait, there's one where he makes a woman blind by accident during a hit, and then he takes care of her because he feels guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw him so long ago, I kind of mixed them up together now. And then there's another one as well. There's this young cop who is working with him, and then at some point at the end there's a massive shootout, and the young cop like accidentally shoots another cop. And I remember just the scene where Trayvon Fats just like, no, that wasn't a cop, that was a bad guy. just to keep him to not, because he knows that the young guy is going to go into shock if he realizes he just killed a cop. He goes, no, no, that was a bad guy. Just focus on what's, and so those movies were pretty good. And they influenced Rodriguez for the Desperado movies after, and Mariachi and Desperado was a huge part of my childhood. Um, yeah, so
You talked
those are,
about first was The Killer, which was the first movie you're talking about where he blinds the lady in the bar.
yeah, yeah.
And he had a movie called Hard Boiled, which was nothing but a bunch of big shootouts.
Yes, that was the one with the young cop, right?
Uh, well, it started with they had a shootout in like a tea house where guys had brought their birds in. Remember they had the bird cages
Oh,
with the
there's
gun.
always a bird. Face off birds. Like John Woo would always bring birds.
No, this was a place where everyone had brought their own cages with birds, but it was a tea house, and the people had guns underneath the bird cages. You know, so there was a huge shootout, and you'd have to see that one. That's the one that I feel they more ripped John Wick off of because it's just one shootout after another.
Well, John Wick sounds like John Woo, like I think it was very much intentional. I don't think it was a coincidence. But
Yeah.
what I mean is that it was fun to see the grappling elements added to action movies because that was one thing that it's kind of like it's obvious that it was coming eventually, but I never before John Wick I just didn't expect to see it. And even when I went to watch the movie, I didn't think it would be there. I didn't expect it. So when I saw those grappling elements, I was very pleasantly surprised. Like it was just, and again, there's still choreography, still cinema. Like it's not real, but it's just it was very fun to see it modernized, if you will. Action movies modernized that way. Um, but wait, it's we're 1 hour in, so I think at this point we should probably because we wanted to talk about it, and we're gonna head into something a bit way less fun than what talking about action movies. But I guess we should talk about. I mean, we want to talk about the whole Cain Velasquez situation.
Mhm.
Um, for those who are not aware, Cain Velasquez was a UFC heavyweight champion, and he has a family member, a minor, who turns out has been sexually abused, and he tried to kill the man who did that to his child.
Mhm.
But and what happened is what's really frustrating as well is that they let the man go out without bail, which is like, why the fuck would you do that? And when you know, and what happened was the way Kane approached it is it wasn't like he was alone with the guy or something like that. It was a car pursuit in a road with other people, and Kane was shooting at the car, and he actually hit the person next to the guy, who I think was the father of the guy, and um, who we don't know if the father knew or not what was going on. We don't have that information. So this is where things get a bit complicated and muddy. And now, you know, Kane has been arrested. He's facing possibly 20 years or life in prison. And a lot of people are saying he should be free because he tried to murder the guy who abused his child. It's very ugly, it's very sad, and it could have been avoided if they hadn't released the guy. That was, I don't know, anyway. But I want to, this is a situation, I'm already, it's so fucking raw that I'm already kind of like, adding more than just the information, I guess. I'm adding my opinion. They shouldn't have released him. Like, I'm already adding my opinion because it's so disgusting and sad. And but
Why should they not have released him?
okay, there's two conversations to be had, and this is kind of complex. But I think there's a conversation of the personal, raw emotion mattering what I would have done in his place, and then there's the
Mhm.
objective side of what the law is supposed to be. And those two things are certainly at conflict, but so is man. So are humans. Humans are at conflict. Humans are yin and yang. The law is there to be objective, and it's not, to be clear. But and this is proof that it's not. But in its ideal form, that guy should not have been released, bail or otherwise.
Why?
Not after well, because he's a freaking danger to children, and
You know, that's the thing. Do I think that his son is lying? No. But do they have any proof that he did it?
Ah, okay. See, you use my point against me. That's true.
No,
Okay.
do they have any? Like, if it was
We
you,
don't know. Well, I don't know,
would you
at least.
would you want me to lock you up for a year or two before you went to trial when I have no proof that you did anything?
Fair point.
You could
Fair
come
point.
back and sue me or
Yeah.
sue the city for violating your civil rights. These cases, and I used to work in child services. A lot of these cases are he said, she said, but one of them is a very young person.
Yeah.
Now, do I think a young person, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, would lie about that? No, I
I don't
don't.
think so either. Yeah.
Usually they aren't lying,
Hmm. Yeah.
but it's just hearsay. It's now if they had
That is
DNA,
true. Innocent until proven guilty. That's true.
if they had DNA evidence, other stuff already. DNA takes a long time to come back. This is stuff you'll see about when I talk to Dave. But
Yeah.
if they had all these pieces of the puzzle already, where they knew they could slam dunk this guy, they wouldn't have given him a bail. But they don't have a lot on him. So what they were going to do is put him
Yeah.
in house arrest. He was going
Yeah.
to have an ankle monitor. He couldn't go anywhere without them knowing where he was.
That's true.
So they had basically put him on house arrest because they didn't have enough to detain him legally. That's why he got a bail.
That's very true. That's a very good point. Derek Galan is someone who has a last name very similar to mine, which I always thought was funny. Um, Says he does have a record for it though, right? No, he didn't. The guy didn't have a record because the way it works, the guy lived. So the reason why this happened, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so horrible. I struggle to say it, but it's a conversation that we should have. What happened is the daycare was the predators, or at least alleged predators' mom's daycare, and he
Mm-hmm.
lived with her. It was at her home, so he lived there. Apparently, a daycare, everyone who lives in that place has a police check regularly or something like that. Like they do check for, does this person have a criminal record? And I think it's not even related to kids. It's just if someone has a criminal record, you cannot have a daycare there. That person cannot live there. So from what I hear from McDojo Life talked about it a little bit. Rob from McDojo Life has done a video. So no, the person apparently didn't have a record because if he did, he couldn't have lived there. So that's the apparently. Again, like I'm not pretending to be this guy who's super informed in this. We're all, I'm coming in like very. I mean, you know, Todd, you kind of brought up a very good point because I'm thinking emotionally as well. Like, oh, the guy hasn't been available for him to do this, but innocent until proven guilty. I truly believe in that as well. And like you said, you can't arrest someone until you're sure. Um, I think it
Well,
brings up, yeah,
they did arrest him. They just couldn't hold him.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because he could probably turn around and say, especially if you don't have a case against a guy and you hold him for 2 or 3 trials, take a while to happen. You hold a guy for 1 or 2 years, you don't have hardly anything on him. You're setting
no,
yourself
and
up for a
then
problem.
like you said, the ankle, which he was going for the ankle, what do you call ankle detector? What's the name of it? The GPS thing,
Mm-hmm.
monitor, the ankle monitor. He was heading to get the ankle monitor when Kane attacked. Um, to me, what's
Yes,
sad,
and
yeah,
he had been waiting for him. That's why they meditated. He knew where he was. Probably had been following him and whatnot. And yeah, that's why they said it was. We had a case here in Tulsa, which you'll probably hear me and Dave talk about, where a guy was beating a kid's mom. Now the kid was an adult, so he was grown, probably in his 20s, and the guy was beating his mother for over a period of time, not just that day, over a period of time, and he was riding his bicycle, and the kid blew him away, blew him off his bicycle, killed him, and just him, you know. And
Hmm.
he got 34 years, and this is a right-leaning state. This is a pro-gun state, all that. He got 34 years
Because it should have been in the moment, I guess. Yeah,
because you can't go and kill somebody just because you want to.
yeah.
Even if
There's
they
a
did something they shouldn't have done,
yeah.
even in Oklahoma where they're very much more in defense of people using guns to protect themselves. You can't hunt somebody down, which is what he did.
Hmm.
He found him. He followed him. It was on a dark road, and he blasted him. And then when they interviewed him in the interrogation room, he was kind of, he wasn't forthcoming. I think if he had just straight up been forthcoming and said, "I did this because of X, Y, Z," maybe he wouldn't have got that much time. But he was
Well,
kind of evasive. He
there's a
tried to kind of buy his way out of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a case, and this again, I'm stealing this information from Rob from my digital life. There's a book which I'll probably buy and read. It's called Why Gary Why, and it happened in the 90s. A karate instructor had like kidnapped a child, a kid that he was training, and he kidnapped him, abused him, and then brought the child back eventually. And they did a rape test, and they found that the kid had been abused.
Mm-hmm.
And the dad waited for the karate instructor was like being taken to court or something, and he was in handcuffs, he was in custody, and the news were there, and the dad waited at a payphone, and when he passed by, the dad shot the guy in the head, right on the news, and apparently the cop was there who knew him, local place, and he said, "Why, Gary? Why?" And the guy didn't spend a single day in jail. The difference with Kane's story, I think, right away, right off the bat, is that Kane endangered other people and even shot another person. Oh, Derek says he saw it on the news. Yeah, I haven't seen the footage yet. I'm pretty sure I could find it, especially with everything that happened. I'm pretty sure other people uploaded it. I think the difference is that Kane has endangered other people. Um, and I can certainly understand as a father the emotional landscape that leads you to that path. But that one's harder to ignore, to be honest. I wish it could be simple. I wish it could have been like Kane and that guy in an alley, with or without a gun, doesn't matter. Like just, if anything, like with his bare hands, he could have done a cleaner job of it. I'm sure. Um, that's a morbid thought. I shouldn't have said that. But if it had been something like that, it would be so much cleaner as a story, right? But now we have to also acknowledge and cope with the fact that Kane has endangered other people, the people around that had nothing to do with that. You could have had a car with kids in there, other families, we don't like, you don't know, like you're chasing after another car, shooting at the car. There's other cars around. Like you're shooting, you hit the driver, the car can go anywhere, can kill anyone. And I wish this was a story where it could be like, oh, free Kane, and I emotionally I feel that, but at the same time I have to acknowledge like that guy endangered other people around, or maybe not. Mm, maybe I'm saying that and there was no one around. I didn't see like clean footage of that
Mm-hmm.
happening, but there's a lot of unknowns. I know that one thing I really disliked is when it initially came out that Kane had shot a man. That was all we knew. You had all those shitty jokes online. Oh, it's CTE. Oh, he's turning into John Jones, and I was so disgusted because we didn't know the facts yet. And
Mm-hmm.
people are so quick. MMA fans are very. There's something about them. I think it's maybe an insecurity because they see these people do those great things, and I think they feel the need to at least feel better than them in some way. So I guess one of those things. Oh, at least I'm not getting CTE. It's kind of like very. It's a very weird dynamic that MMA fans have with fighters. There's a bit of
Mm-hmm.
resentment and jealousy there, and so they love to make CTE jokes, which is very disrespectful because even if it was, you don't make jokes about that shit and you don't say it if you don't know. And it turns out, no, it wasn't CTE. It was a very real pain caused by a horrible event that a father was living through. Um, and that also left me very pissed off at the MMA fan base. And then everyone's suddenly, oh, free Kane. Yeah, well,
Yeah, I mean, hold on a second. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. Like,
take your time. This is not something we should be.
what I was actually, I think CTE might, and I'm gonna reference a guy, no, Mike Molina, that I knew in Japan. He was talking about this on his Facebook. Um, Actually, CTA might be a defense that they could use. And the reason I say that is because his plan wasn't well thought out. It
No, it
was
wasn't.
irrational. Yeah, what he did was pretty irrational.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of something, Mark Garagos, who is his attorney, is a very good attorney. He was one of O.J. Simpson's attorneys, by the way, in his murder case. And so he's one of the best lawyers in California, in the United States, probably, criminal defense attorneys.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be shocked if they use it as a defense.
So he's the one
And
defending Kane.
yes,
So,
you could say, look, my guy has these issues. This is why he
mhm.
acted rationally. This is why he didn't just go beat him up somewhere. He wasn't thinking
Yeah,
clear.
because it would have been much more efficient for him to sneak into a guy's house and and the monitor would have still been there, like with his bare hands, it would be so easy.
Or
Um,
just to get out of the car and shoot just him. Yeah, he
I
could have
do,
swooped up and shot it. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. Then
let's say
again,
my guy did irrationally. My guy has a history of being hit in the head and blah blah blah, and use that as a defense. And there might be some room there to do that based on how
but,
he acted.
but if they do, doesn't that imply that and I'm just thinking, like, I'm wondering, like, if they do, doesn't that imply that, oh, if he's not in control of his emotions, isn't he dangerous? Doesn't that, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but doesn't that actually go maybe against his case a little bit in some way?
Not necessarily, because when you have violent crimes, especially death penalty cases, but you can use it in these crimes as well. You have what is called aggravating factors. Aggravating factors are what the guy did. You see this a lot more in death penalty cases. We're looking at, okay, do we give this guy the death penalty? What did he do? How bad was it? How many people did he kill? How did he do it? Blah blah blah. These are aggravating factors. Then you have mitigating factors. Mitigating factors is, how was his childhood? Does he have problems? Does he have you know mental illnesses? Blah blah blah.
Hmm.
If these match up, that can play in your favor. But if
Okay.
the aggravating factors are up here and your mitigation's down here, you're going to get smoked at trial. That's the difference. So if they come up with enough, stuff to make it look like, okay, my guy did this because of this, X, Y,
Hmm.
Z. This is what he did. Now it's in the even. That's a little bit better. Or maybe even mitigating factors is up here, aggravating factors down here. So this is something they could do. So they could use CPU. They could use that he wasn't thinking rationally, that he wasn't capable of thinking rationally because of what had happened, and also because of the career he had, athletic career. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if they did use that.
What's said about this, and it makes you think as a father, like it really makes you think of what's a priority. And what I mean by that is, if Kane goes to jail now, not only did this happen to his son, I believe, right?
I believe
We
so,
don't,
yeah.
yeah, we're not, we're gonna go with that. I may be wrong. Again, the facts are a bit scattered. I'm gonna say his son, but could apply to any other minor that's part of his family. But I think we're talking about his son, and not only does this happen to his son, now he might have to deal with it without his father. And I think if this happens to a kid, like it's more important than ever that he has his father figure there to counterbalance those events, and just for affection, support, and all of that. And yeah, it's important for a kid in the first place to have his father just in a normal life without traumatic events. And I think it also brings to bear because a lot of people are oversimplifying this as a matter of, oh, the guy deserved it, or yeah, as a father, that's what you do. But I also think it left me thinking a lot because that's a very raw emotional reaction. But then when you consider what's best for the child, for what's best for the child is for the dad to be there as well. For the kid to no longer be in danger, that's for sure, but for the dad to be there for the child. and that's also something that's really sad. That these actions will make it so maybe he's not there for his kid, and that's horrible. That's like so horrible that in the combination of it, and then for a child growing up to know that all of this was caused and happened because around them, you know. Um, I think as men and like we often, and sometimes rightfully so, like think of our capacity to do violence as a role in the family structure, and if the attacker comes, and but we are also there to nurture. You know, if we choose, I don't. I actually, I'm sorry, I actually don't know if you have kids or not.
Mm.
No, okay. But I think when a man becomes a father, like you're not just there to beat up people who try something. You know, like you're also there to nurture and to look after and to raise. Um, and I think when violent things happen, or when the people you love get hurt, it's natural for a lot of men to revert to our most primal violent tendencies of protecting the those that are yours and making people pay. But is that really the priority? You know, like, and I don't know. I just it just led me down this spiral of thinking of those things. You know, did you really protect your own if you end up in jail for the rest of your life for 20 years, and then next time you see your kid out, the kid's an adult. You weren't there to guide them and help them. You know, um, ah, no, you know, it's not clean
You're
in this case.
you're an empathetic person. You know, you get emotional over, which
Yeah,
is fine. Not everybody's the same. Me,
yeah,
I'm just looking at it like this,
mm,
you know, and it's not because I, have anything against anybody. I'm just looking at what happened, how the courts work,
mm,
blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
And I think that's because I find this kind of, these kind of programs. Like I said, we have the first 48 here in Tulsa. Um, I don't know if you've ever seen the show, but it's a homicide show. A lot of people get killed here in Tulsa. And that's not to say if you come to Tulsa you're going to get killed. I'm trying to say I don't want people to think that, but you know, I've known several since I before I came back home. Because I'm from this area, not Tulsa, but right outside of Tulsa. I had never known anyone that had been killed, and I had never known anyone that had killed anybody. But since I've been back 2013, I know a person that has been murdered. I know two people that were killed in self-defense. They were, in fact, I know a kid that was killed last week in a self-defense situation. I A guy I grew up with murdered somebody, and I know another kid that committed a murder too. So, and these five people, and just since 2013, you know, the whole time I lived up to that point, I didn't know anybody that got murdered. So it is more violent, but this show really gets into kind of like the details of what you're looking at when you have violent crimes. And they go to these homicides. You will see Dave on the show if you ever watched it. He
yeah,
was he was the lead homicide investigator in Tulsa for about 8 years. And it gets into these cases. You have some cases like this where people take matters in their own hands and they decide to
mm,
go and take care of business themselves. Some of them, it's in different circumstances. Maybe somebody took something from this guy, he goes up and kills. It could be anything, but and it never works out for them when they do it.
mm,
And like I said, Oklahoma's a very right leaning state. Oklahoma's a very pro gun state. Oklahoma's a very I would say defend yourself if need be.
mm,
But if somebody does something to you, and like I said, steals from you, beats you up, whatever, and you go and smoke them, even if it was just them, you're going to get charged with shooting with intent to kill or murder or whatever it is if the guy dies. Yeah. So it never is a situation where, unless you can somehow say, well, the guy was trying to do something to me at the time,
Hmm. Yeah.
other than that, you're going to get charged no matter what the person did to you, how bad it was. If you go over there and take a shot at them, you're getting charged. And California, Dave told me he thinks Kane will probably get about 12 years and maybe serve. I think in California you have to serve 85% of whatever sentence you get.
Okay.
Now in Oklahoma, he said he'd probably get something similar, but he'd serve like 4 or 5 of those years maybe, and he'd be out as long as he didn't kept his nose clean in prison. Which is hard to do. Um, not get time added onto your sentence for being involved in a fight or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see because I think it's a case that's it's high profile in the MMA community, but I think it'll be more high profile nationally once it happens because of the story, because of what he did. I think it will, like I said, he's got Mark Garagos. That's not a small time lawyer. It's a big time lawyer. He takes cases that are high profile. He's the guy that wants to be seen.
Yeah.
He doesn't just do stuff just to do it.
If the glove doesn't fit, yeah.
Yeah, he wants
That
some
was
publicity.
that sentence. Like, see, I was a kid when that happened, and I
Yeah, that's
still
Johnny
know that.
Cochran.
Hmm?
Yeah, Johnny Cochran was the one who said that.
Oh, okay. So that. Oh, yeah. He had many lawyers then. Okay.
Yeah, he had Johnny Cochran. He had Mark Garagos. He had a
Okay.
couple others. He had maybe 4.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Kardashian's father, Robert Kardashian, was one of
Yeah.
his lawyers.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, before anyone knew who the Kardashians were.
Well, what happened to
Uh,
them anyway? We never hear about them.
Robert Kardashian passed away. He had
Yeah.
maybe cancer or something, I believe. This
Yeah.
was before they ever had their show or anything like that.
Yeah. No, obviously I'm joking. Like, I saw something online that was like, that was pretty funny. It was like,
Oh,
it was a quote that said, "Everything that I've learned about the Kardashians, I learned against my will," and that's literally my case. Like, like anything I know about them, I never sought it out. It was just shit that I saw in a magazine, waiting for a cashier, for the supermarket. That they're just like stuff that shows up in ads or news articles, and I'm like, I don't want to know this. I'm not interested. Like stuff they keep shoving them in everyone's faces. I don't even get it. I don't understand it.
the first
Uh,
time I heard his name was OJ's trial. And his wife, um, I forgot her name, Miss Jen, Kate,
mm.
I forgot her first name. His wife, she was very close to OJ Simpson's wife, who was killed.
Oh,
Yeah, they all hung
that's
out
messy.
together. Robert Kardashian and OJ Simpson knew each other really well. And
Yeah.
so they were all in the same circles. And so they were very close to that case, the Kardashian family. They knew OJ, they knew the kids, all that. So that was
Mm.
the first time I heard the name Kardashian was the Simpson trial.
Yeah.
It
And
wasn't,
now it's like jokes about Kanye and what's his name?
yeah,
That guy, the comedian. He was at the Jake Paul Ben Askren boxing fight. What was it? What's his name?
yeah.
Whatever. uh, Todd Atkins joined. So there's two Todd Atkinsons here. What is this?
Oh, there's a guy who has a name similar to mine that follows
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
No. Are there
Uh,
people commenting on there?
Not really. No, we had Derek Galanis for a bit, but I think he left. So he asked if the guy didn't have a record, like the alleged predator of Kane's kid, and And no, and I explained they check for those things when someone lives at a home that's used as daycare. For any criminal record, from my understanding, again, like a lot of information I got from Rob's videos from McDougall Life.
Hmm.
And did you know if Dave was coming, by the way, for the conversation, or wasn't sure, right?
Who? Dave?
Dave, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he was going to be able to do it today.
No, at this point, I
He,
imagine.
I think what he wanted to do was do some more research. He
Mm,
did tell me that he has a couple of things that he thinks people aren't necessarily talking about. Um, like I said, he's a homicide detective, so he's probably
yeah,
going to read over it some more.
yeah.
Initially, when he looked at it, he just kind of told me, okay, this is how many years I think he's going to get, that kind of thing.
12.
So
Oh, no,
he's
12,
not a
12 sentence, but not as many served.
well, 85% California. I don't know. I'd have to do the math, but in Oklahoma, he probably would have served 4 or 5. Maybe he'll serve like closer to 8 or 9 if he gets 12 years. But it'll be interesting to see if they, California, even though it's more of a left-leaning state, I heard they are pretty serious about gun violence in California because they're more anti-gun than Oklahoma is. Oklahoma's more pro-gun, so they
So
may
did
not lenient
it,
on the
so it
stance.
happened. It happened in which state? The shooting,
California,
California, and that's left leaning. Okay,
yeah, very left-leaning.
I'm a Canadian, so like sometimes I
Probably
don't know. I don't
most
always remember what states.
probably the most left-leaning state in the United States is California.
Okay, okay.
But left-leaning people, liberals, are not fond of guns at all.
Hmm.
Gun rights, gun violence, any of those things. So
But is this the
California,
case where they would make an example of someone? You know what I mean? Like if, with the story around it. I don't know if this is the case or even. I mean, I'm a bad example of a left-leaning person in the sense that I don't really. I tend to be very centrist in a lot of stuff. So I'm a bad example of your typical left-leaning person, I guess. But so this is where I find it hard sometimes to gauge what the left reaction will be, I guess. But I think for even for people who are very anti-gun with a story like this.
it's going to be interesting to see how people look at it and how the court system looks at it. You
Yeah.
know, I assume they'll follow the letter of the law as far as whatever goes with that. But it'll be interesting to see how public and if it picks up as a national kind of story or not. This is a big story in the MMA community, yeah, but I think it could be a bigger story once it actually starts to go to trial and whatnot. Um, now maybe he'll take a plea and we'll never see it go to trial. That's possible, but like if they said, "Hey, we'll let your guy plead to a walk in the park or something," a few years, he just goes in and pleads guilty. Maybe they'll do that, but you know, it remains to be seen.
So if he takes a plea, I mean,
It'll be
now we get
interesting to see
into
how it plays out.
yeah, yeah. It's part of me hopes that it doesn't. Well, I don't know. Part of me hopes that it doesn't become this news phenomenon because first of all, I don't really want that for, as you said, I'm empathetic. It's not something I wish upon. I think there's a lot of attention already on Kane and his family, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily wish them the level of attention that a nationwide story would get. Um, so if only for that, again, I'm hoping it doesn't get there to that like the national interest. Um, but who knows?
Well, his lawyers will weigh the odds of how much time will my guy get if we do this,
Yeah.
if we could potentially lose. If there's no chance of us getting him off with 0 time,
Mhm.
because I think that's going to be hard to say, oh,
Yeah,
he's not.
there's no way. There's no
I
way.
think to getting a not guilty is almost 0. So
Yeah.
now it becomes, how many years does he get if he is convicted? Is it worth it to even risk that? Maybe we could cop a plea, and my guy gets out in 4 years, 5 years.
Beyond time lost, I wonder. I mean, the time lost is horrible, but the, having a criminal record in itself, in the States, is it very life limiting? Because I think I'm saying in the States, I don't know about Canada, but I think there's some places you can vote in the States if you have a criminal record, or am I getting this wrong?
Well, I think Derek would be a great guy to talk to that about. Do you know Derek's story at all?
Well, I know some of his background because I've seen some little from your show on Instagram. I've seen snippets. But I think he left already, yeah. So he was interacting with us for a bit, but we should have probably invited him in.
Derek
Um,
was a crime family. His father is in prison. His brother is in prison. He did 10 years in prison.
yeah,
Um, he was on house arrest when I had him on my show.
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
he had just
wonder,
got, yeah.
yeah, I wonder
He,
how Kane would do in prison actually. Um,
it's something you could talk to Derek about if you want these kind of questions. Derek's a great guest.
is he still online?
You should get him on your show like for your own thing because Derek's a guy
I
you
don't. Yeah,
should
I
do
don't want
something.
to go around. What's it? What's the word? Um, when you steal guests and stuff. What do you?
Oh, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Derek is a guy. I try to get him on other people's shows because I think Derek is a guy that he's very knowledgeable and he also has a
Like,
lot
yeah.
about fights too, man. He's great to talk to about fights. Um, if you watch his content, he has a book that he wrote about fights too. You know,
Really?
yes,
What's the name of the book?
Warrior of the Light.
Well, okay. I mean, I can always look up his name, of course.
And then he had a book called Greed and Fear, which is about his family, the Galanis crime family.
Yeah. I'm telling you that when I saw the last name, it felt really weird because it's really similar to mine. It's like two
Yeah,
letters away from the same. He's a Italian background, I think.
I'm sorry.
He's Italian American, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
His father was involved in that boardwalk. Helped to kind of put. If you ever saw like man,
Boardwalk Empire.
yeah, 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 and that was depicted in some movies. I
Yeah,
think
TV
maybe.
show. I never watched it, but yeah, it had the Steve Buscemi in it.
Yeah, and his father's still in prison. His brother's still in prison. His father's Peter Galanis. His brother is I forgot his brother's name, but he's locked up. They were all part of the same thing, which was fairly large financial scams. And he'll tell you all about it. He's not ashamed to talk about it.
Well, I
And
mean, if he served his time too, like there's no at this point,
yeah,
yeah, there's no.
well,
I guess.
about it. But I think it would be interesting to talk to him about getting out and trying to, because you asked, is it limiting? He's going through that right now, so
Okay.
he could tell you how much it's
Yeah, for
limited him.
sure. I think I'm gonna. Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. I think I'm gonna reach out. It's like you said because I just thought of that. Yeah. I actually don't know, and the truth is, even in Canada, I don't know. It's kind of funny how in North America, like Canada and the States, like we often have this because of pop culture. We often have the American conversation, and sometimes we don't even know how it is in Canada. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe like, oh yeah, in the States it's like that, and then we turn around, oh, it's the same here, really? So it happens sometimes. Yeah, for sure.
Derek was in prison with Rick Ross, Freeway Ricky Ross. Do you know who
Rick,
Ricky Ross is?
no, or I mean, maybe I will when you explain it, but right now I don't.
Ricky Ross is probably one of the most famous drug dealers in the history of the United States. And he was kind of the one who was, kind of responsible for the crack epidemic that
Really?
blew up. Yeah, Freeway Ricky Ross, and Derek was in prison with Rick Ross. And yeah, so Derek's been in prison with some famous people and mobsters. Yeah, he was a Gambino crime family associate. So he comes from an organized crime background, so to speak. And yeah, so he's been, he trained at the Scrap Pack with Gilbert Melendez and Jake Shields and
Oh,
all those.
really?
Yeah, Derek has a history in the MMA world, man. So he's got a little bit of both things that you might find
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, the funny thing about me is like I'm pretty sure you picked up on this right now, but I'm really not a tough guy or someone who really delves into those things. I'm pretty sure you have picked up on this by now. But
Mm-hmm.
I do have an interesting face, I guess, and very European looking. So the thing that happened to me sometimes in my life is that people thought, for some reason, that I was someone else, or that
Mm.
it's happened in my life. There's really funny stories, actually. There's funny stories. I don't know how else to say it. This one time when I was like 19 or something, and had just I had a relationship that had just ended. I was in kind of a sour mood, and back then, because it was like in the early 2000s, it's a cool look. I would like pull my hair back. Of course, my hairline was a lot straighter, but I would pull my hair back, like slicked back with gel, and like with my nose and everything, and I was wearing a leather jacket, so it had a certain. It's kind of like the same way that a lot of people dress in the 2000s, but because of my face, it kind of gave it a different look. And I was in this small city, and it's such a stupid story. And I just wanted to go out for drinks by myself. I was in a bad mood. You know what? I'm gonna go out for drinks and whatever. And I just look at this, and I go out for drinks here and there. It's a small city. I just go. I get drunk, and I'm walking by myself. And then when you're drunk, sometimes you get obsessed with this really stupid thing, and you want to eat this, or you want to do this, or like you just go into this like, I really want to eat a club sandwich or whatever. And I was walking, and there's this bar. It just looks like a very normal bar. And people inside were dressed like, like whatever. They weren't very well dressed. That's all. No one looked like anything out of a movie or whatever. It looked like a very normal place. And I see this pinball machine with the lights, and I'm just like very drunk. Like, you know what? I haven't played a pinball machine in a long time. I'm gonna go inside and play a pinball machine. So I go inside, and I go to the pinball machine, and then I hear a guy, "Hey, we're actually using it. We're playing." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sorry, I don't know. Go ahead." And the two guys again, they don't look like, they just look a bit dirty, like wearing caps, and they did, decent t-shirt, um, aged roughly but not old. Just they look like they had a rough life, but they don't look that old. Um, and then they go, "That's okay. You can play with us if you want." Okay, very well. And they always start playing pinball, and like they're like already. It's kind of weird how they focus on like very everything has to be rough with them. Like for example, the pinball machine, I would grab the thing, I pull, and I release it, and the ball goes there. It goes out, and they go, "No, no, you have to smack it." Bang. Like, oh, okay. And then they start like saying weird stuff. Like when I'm like, "You're pretty, you're very. That's a weird nose," and don't say that about him. No, but he's a good-looking man. But they're making comments that are like, it's kind of weird. Normally, dudes don't comment on my looks, but it's kind of a talk that some people pick up in certain environments where it's kind of used as an intimidation factor, like I don't know, prison, for example. I didn't know these things, and then they go like, and that's in Quebec, so it's French Canadian. So we're talking in French actually in that story. But this word is English, but they used it. It's a screw. Are you a screw? Like, what is a screw? It's like a cup. Are you a cup? So they thought just because I stand out, and it happened to me in jobs where like just out of standing out, the managers would either really like me or hate me. It just for some reason I stand out. My body language, the way I look, and so because I went in there and no one knew me, and at some point one of them went. So I guess he went did the rounds. Do you know this guy? Because I just walked
Mm-hmm.
in randomly, and I guess people either they knew better, or they look more inconspicuous, and here I come with my leather jacket and the hair swept back, and they just got convinced I was a cop for some reason. And I was already drinking my Corona. I'm drinking my beer, and I'm like, well, and I had the sense that it wasn't a good idea to just leave right away. I don't know if I was right or wrong. I was really drunk, but my thought in that moment was, if I leave now, they might think, oh, we were onto him, and this is why he just left. even though I knew I was maybe not in the environment I should have gone into. So I decided to stay and finish my beer. And no, actually, I was finishing. I ordered a second one to make a point that I had nothing to worry. Another one, and I wasn't. And I'm having the second beer, and then it's kind of when it got kind of weird because one of them came back and with a notepad and a pen, and he's like, "I want to see your ID." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "I want to see your ID." And I was like, "I'm not showing you my ID." And he goes, "Well, I just want to make sure you're a cup. If you're not a cup, why do you have something to hide, you know?" And I got really angry and drunk, and I pulled out this card that was from a hobby store, like, which in retrospect, like, I shouldn't have done that because the guy who has the store, you never know. But it just showed this geek store. I'm like, "See this? I'm a geek. I'm not a cop. I'm a geek." I'm like screaming at the guy. It turns out it was owned by the Bikers bar. And I'm screaming at this guy, and I'm not a cop. I'm a geek. And then I actually pulled out my card with my foot, but I actually covered everything with my thumb. And I was like, "This is my piece of ID. We're not seeing more of it." And I just put it back. And the guy goes, "Well, okay." And he leaves. And then I'm playing pinball, and the other guy leaves as well. And I'm playing pinball by myself at that point. I mean, also they have sniffed something in front of me at some point. They have been like sniffing stuff. And I'm playing pinball by myself. And then suddenly out of a door that I didn't know was in the back of the bar comes up this guy, and he's like this old dude who's super tall and super like large. I'm not saying he's fit, but just he's a naturally large man, like you naturally strong, you know. And he has like this hair that's kind of out of the 80s, like this white hair up and like kind of with a mullet, but going up, and he has like all these golden chains and freaking big rings. And he comes out from the back and he stops next to the pinball machine to just observe me. And I'm playing the pinball machine. And at that point, I'm just like trying not to laugh because I was kind of nervous. I was drunk, and for some reason, that translated to me finding the whole thing very funny. How this drunk random dude walked into the bar because they had a pinball machine, and all this whole bar of the criminal element was kind of like wondering who I was, and kind of like I was kind of like wasting their time just by being there. and, and I just keep playing. And the guy just left, and then after the two other dudes came back, and they were a lot more relaxed. I think the guy who came to look at me was a bit smarter, and he saw, this guy, this guy's just a random guy. And then two women came in. They got distracted by the women. And that's when I like finished my dinner. Like, okay, guys, take care. And by then they didn't care about me because two women had come in. They had been told this guy is nobody. It's fine. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when I saw my exit to leave without them feeling kind of paranoid about me. And it's just that was my closest interaction, I think. But oh no, there's another one when I and apparently that could have ended badly for me if my friend hadn't given some context. But that's like as close as my circle of people goes. Like I
Mm-hmm.
um, never go near that. But so you're talking to me about these things where I'm completely ignorant. You're telling me a lot of stuff that I wonder out loud, like, oh, how does this work? And you're like, well, you could talk to this guy I talk to all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you do a lot of this stuff. If you reach out to all kinds of different people,
yeah.
like I have, um, yeah, you kind of know people have done all sorts of weird stuff. And I always try to put some of my guests onto other people because I'm like, yeah, I know somebody to talk to you about that.
Yeah,
You
you
could
do
go.
that. You like to connect people to each other. It's actually this thing you do. It's very nice of you. Very admirable. You're always trying to get people in
Mhm.
touch. Like when I mentioned that one time, I one of the episode I saw with Dave, like when he was talking about Hawaii and like all those crazy stories, and um, as soon as I brought up like, oh yeah, that was a cool episode. At some point, the first time we went live together about a year ago or something, you were like, oh, that's Dave, he's on. Like you're always like telling people about each other, which is
Mhm.
really really nice of you. Um, because it's not. I think the internet, it's not a competition or anything like that.
Mhm.
I think everyone benefits from helping each other out, and if only for the fun of it, you know. It's just this environment where you get to talk to all kinds of, like, you and I would never have met if not for the internet.
Right.
Um, Other than maybe meeting in an MMA gym, I don't see how we could have met, you know, like even
Mhm.
if we lived in the same city, probably. So it's just really cool that we live in a day and age like this, where it's like, oh yeah, you're wondering about this. Like, look, I know this guy from this other place, and this guy I talked to when he wasn't. You're like, this guy I talked to when he was in house arrest, and he was still able to talk to you like that. And yeah, I've been rambling for a while. Like, I have to find ways to tell the stories shorter sometimes.
No,
But
no. I do have to get going though because it's like
yeah,
almost 11, so I got to wait. But
yes.
yeah, what you were saying, like Derek, I wouldn't have known Derek if it wasn't for the internet. I taught Derek how to make like TikTok accounts. I taught him how to do his, because Derek is pretty big on TikTok now. A
Really?
lot of people, a lot of people ask him questions about prison, about organized crime, people he was in jail with, fighting. He talks about that too. So I showed him, hey, when people ask you questions, you can post the question up here, and then do a video response.
Well, you
So
you
he
showed
does
me how
stuff
to
all
save.
the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I was
that's
like,
funny.
and I bet because I saw other inmates doing that on TikTok, and I said, dude, you could do this. Plus, you have this organized crime background. You could answer all sorts of
Yeah,
crazy
stories
stuff.
probably beat that of a lot of people. Was like, I was there because I stole a car. You know.
So
uh,
now, if you look at his Instagram and stuff, he's posting stuff from his TikTok on Instagram of him answering questions, and he does it all the time. And I remember his wife sent me like a huge box of cookies, like home baked cookies, because
oh, nice.
he's doing this stuff, and it made book, and he's using it to promote his books. So
Yeah,
yeah, I helped him make those pages so he could promote it, promote himself, promote his books, answer questions.
that's
Yeah.
really cool. That's really cool. It's um, I do think like TikTok is owned by isn't it Chinese now? Isn't it owned by China now?
I have no idea, but
Yeah.
it's stuff people can use to their advantage.
I have to upload my stuff on Odyssey because I like Odyssey. It's more independent. They don't censor as much, and YouTube. You know what happened to me before you go? You know what happened to me on Instagram when I created the Instagram account I'm using now for the Bruno Galan talk show. I had no like I just created the account and I started following some people, and I had been talking to he's been on my Bruno's MMA show, Tony Blauer, and Tony Blauer isn't this favorite, has been shadow banned, and actually people can find him in a search easily because of his use in COVID. I think I don't know why, but for some reason he's been shadow banned and all that. And I contacted him and actually showed him, hey, look, when I went to follow you, and the thing is, I probably like I don't think I agree with Tony a lot politically, but he's a fascinating man that knows a lot of self-defense and should be taken seriously in these matters. And overall, I think a good man. And I saw like when I went to follow him, it told me this page has a lot of misinformation. Are you sure you want to follow? And I was like, yes. But I took a screenshot because I thought it was funny, and I sent it to him. And so that was one of my first direct messages. Hey Tony, look, like apparently it's dangerous to follow you or something like that. It was just funny. But then what happened is this Instagram account suddenly I couldn't send. Normally the way I invite people is I contact them on social media. Well, that's the only way I have. And they they told me that they couldn't. Instagram told me I was blocked for a week or two because it had been there was evidence that I had paid to have likes on my account. I had
Mm.
maybe the most likes I had was 2 likes on it. Like, it made no sense. And it made no sense whatsoever because I was like, but it's not like I have like I don't even have like 10 likes on any of my posts on this account, even to this day, right now. And I was like, this is a whole completely new account. No one's following it. No, and there's no big amount of likes. What the hell is this? And then even when I did a search today, I wanted to link for our conversation. I wanted to link the profile, my Instagram profile, to my Twitter account, so I could say this is where you go watch the live show. And I did a Google search of the Roland talk show, and I saw I have the Bruno's MMA show, so the name itself pops up in other Twitter accounts. I saw my other account mentioning it, but I didn't see any results of the Bruno Galan Talk Show Instagram page on Google. And
Hmm.
I'm like, shit. So just for telling Tony that, hey, look, haha, isn't this funny? I think they shadow banned this Instagram account. I think. And yeah, and then another a friend that well, a friend. I mean, this guy I know online, James Desboro. He's a geek on the geek side of the world. He's a writer, but he's also controversial. You know, like he for whatever, and he does videos, and sometimes he talks about political stuff like Ukraine, and like he talks about these things. And I kept telling him, you should really open a channel on Odyssey, because sometimes even if he, I don't know, even if he argues against something that, he's also on the left, but even if he argues against some points of views that YouTube wants to censor, just the algorithm, the keywords, and all of that, they take his video as being one of those videos. So I don't know, you do a video arguing against racism, for example, but because you have to address the arguments, then the whole apparatus of YouTube like makes him kind of go away. And then I told him, open an Odyssey, make an Odyssey account, and for that recurring video, he's in the thousands of views already. Has like a few hundred on YouTube, not even in Odyssey, it just went like thousands and thousands of views. So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to mention, like, I think this account is shadow banned actually.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see here soon.
Yeah, it's funny. Anyway. Well, okay. I've taken a lot of your time, and yeah, as always, Todd, like a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your input and your suggestions, even sharing your guests and all that, and telling you should talk to this guy. It's really cool. And as always, you're welcome back anytime. Do you want to tell people where they can find you online?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me here at the underscore Todd underscore Atkins underscore show. And then I have like a TikTok, Todd Atkins show, YouTube, same deal. But I do most of my stuff here, so if you follow my Instagram, you'll see live videos that I do.
Yeah, you're the one who dragged me kicking and screaming to doing this as a live Instagram. And I even had to ask you, how do I save a live? We'll see if it worked. We'll
Yeah,
see
and
if it worked.
you can make small clips and the reels and stuff. I'll show you how to do all that stuff.
Cool. Okay, well, for now, I'll let you go. And everyone, thanks for watching. And this video will be uploaded later on YouTube. So everyone on YouTube, thanks for watching. Also, Odyssey, after all of this, how can I not?
All right,
Take
take
care,
care.
man. Bye.
Yep.